Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on your time zone, and welcome to the 5G Challenge for 2023. We are very excited to discuss the second year of the 5G Challenge with you this morning, and we hope you really enjoy the webinar today. I am Julie Cubb. I am the 5G Challenge Program Manager. I'm from the U.S. Department of Commerce, National Telecommunications and Information Administration, NTIA, Institute for Telecommunications out of Boulder, Colorado. We're an R&D lab in support of our parent, the NTIA. And from here on out, I'll use NTIA for short when I introduce folks that are from our organization. This is a collaborative effort with the Department of Defense, Office of the Undersecretary of Defense, and Research and Engineering. We're going to refer to our collaborative partner as DoD for short from here on out. Today, in the first half of this 1-hour webinar, NTIA and Cable Labs, our host lab, are going to be discussing the challenge structure for 2023, the host lab information, and other important dates, documents, and details. In the second half, we will be answering your questions. We are going to start with the questions that were submitted during the registration process, and we really do thank you for all those questions that everybody submitted. If time allows, we're going to address additional questions that are raised on this call. If you'll notice at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A section of the control panel. This is not the chat. Do not ask questions into the chat. Specifically, ask questions into the Q&A pane. We encourage everyone to ask questions anytime during the presentations. You can emphasize a question with a thumbs up gesture. We may not have time to answer all the questions. Any questions that we do not answer, we will add to our FAQs on the website. And in fact, the PowerPoint presentation, the additional FAQs, and this webinar recording will be available towards the end of next week on our 5G Challenge website. Also, I want to point out that if people would like to receive information, there is a distro list that you can sign up for at our 5G website, 5G Challenge website. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to Jeremy Glenn, the NTIA 5G Challenge Deputy Program Manager. He's going to be discussing eligibility.
Thank you, Julie. So the eligibility topic has come up. We do have some questions we will answer at the end of this presentation, but we wanted to give just a brief overview of what the rules state. So we are accepting applications of two varieties. The first option is an organization entry. This could be a single organization or multiple organizations that have partnered together on one white paper. To be eligible for this competition, the organization must have a primary place of business in the United States. So it must be a US-based organization. It's fine if it's a subsidiary of a different organization that's not US-based, but to be eligible as an organization or multiple organizations, the submitter must have that US address for their place of business. The second option is as an individual or a group of individuals, what we call a contestant team. The eligibility on an individual entry is that the team leader or the individual who is entering, it must be at least 18 years old and must be a US citizen or a permanent US resident. Now, we do have some ineligible entities and individuals, companies barred from US contracting, government employees and contractors that are working in the scope of their employment. So just to clarify, government employees and contractors are not eligible to compete in the 5G Challenge within the scope of their employment or contract for the US government. If you have more specific questions, please drop them into the Q&A box. And if we have time, we will get to them at the end of this presentation. And if not, we will follow up with an answer. And finally, people supporting or advising the 5G Challenge are not eligible. Okay, with that, I'm going to hand things over to Margaret Pinson to go more into details on the challenge structure.
So, greetings. Can I have the slide control, please? Okay, so this figure has the subsystems and interfaces that we will be examining in the 2023 5G Challenge. There are two subsystems. The first is the RU, and the second is a combined CU and DU. And the interfaces are in yellow. That's the NG, the XN, open fronthaul, and UU interface. We will not be testing the F1 interface, which was tested last year, and contestants must successfully integrate between the CU and DU before submitting the combined CU and DU to the host lab. We have three testing tracks that we'll be examining. Wraparound emulation testing track only involves stage 2, and we're not expecting to accept many or any contestants into this testing track. The second testing track is multi-vendor end-to-end integration, which will involve both stages 2 and 3. And the third is mobility testing, which involves stages 2, 3, and 4. Mobility testing is optional, and we're expecting to accept most contestants into either the multi-vendor end-to-end integration testing track or the mobility testing track. These are the stages of the challenge, and I'm going to be talking about each one of these as we progress. So let's start with stage 1, which involves the white paper and software bill of materials. You will apply to the 2023 5G Challenge by writing a white paper, and we have an application template and an example faux application on our website for you to look at. Please use that application template and provide the information in the order that it's listed. This will help us make faster decisions and find all of your information. The white paper includes requests for information like technical specifications of your system, and this is critical because it will help us pair you with suitable other partners in the challenge, and these partnerships need to be established up front. The application includes a request of whether you are willing to participate in mobility testing, which is optional, and what configurations you're interested in and what is their priority. And we'll talk more about mobility testing and these configurations later. On the application, please indicate your preferred 5G test system, Keysight or Viavi. We will try to partner you with whichever of these systems you've requested, but we can't guarantee. And you are allowed to submit multiple subsystems, for example, 2 different RUs with different specifications. And this will allow us to choose the subsystems whose specifications allow us to partner you with another contestant that would be appealing. So if you have multiple options, please consider submitting them. The selection process will occur and finalized by March 6th, and that is the initial pool of contestants will be announced March 6th, and we're expecting to select at least 4 combined CU and DU and at least 4 RUs. Our criteria summarized are: we want to maximize the application score, that is when we rate your white paper application. We want to maximize the number of unique contestants in the challenge. We want to enable both the multi-vendor end-to-end integration and the mobility testing track. We want to make good use, efficient use of the host lab resources, and we'll be emphasizing products that dominate the US market. Upon acceptance, you'll receive a letter from the 5G Challenge organizers that describes what has been accepted and how. That is, which system has been accepted, which testing track you're on, mobility testing or end-to-end wraparound multi-vendor integration, most likely, will you be using Viavi or Keysight, who are your partners, and what is your initial lab schedule. And the host lab will also be sending you onboarding information. Contestants who are not immediately accepted but are qualified for acceptance will be added to a wait list, and we may accept additional contestants into the challenge as the challenge progresses from this wait list. And applicants who are put on this wait list will receive not only information that they're on the wait list, but what is their position on the wait list, first, second, third, and so on. We will leave the challenge open to accept more white paper applications after the March 1st deadline. However, these walk-on contestants will only be accepted if there is no qualified candidate on the wait list that has compatible technical specifications. 2 weeks after acceptance, you will need to submit a software bill of materials, SBOM, and if there are known vulnerabilities in your system, you will also need to supply a vulnerability exploitability exchange. And the contest rules has links to other websites where you can get more information about the SBOM and VEX. With that, let's move to stage 2, where we begin the lab testing. The stage 2 consists of wraparound emulation testing of each subsystem separately. That is the RU to test the open frontal and UU interfaces, and the combined CU and DU to test the NG, XN, and open frontal interface. The detailed host lab test plans will be released March 20th. An overview of those test plans is already available on our website. You may deliver your subsystems either through cluster delivery, remote install, or a bare metal. And in addition, on your white paper to specifying your primary intended delivery option, we need you to specify a backup plan. If something goes wrong, we're expecting the wraparound approximately 3 weeks. And the first 10 contestants that pass stage 2 testing will each receive a $100,000 prize. So let's move to stage 3. Stage 3 consists of end-to-end integration testing with the host lab's standalone core, the combined CU/DU, an RU, and an emulated UE. And there are 3 different types of end-to-end testing: type A, type B, and type C. Type A involves the same contestants RU and combined CU and DU. Type B contains one contestant CU and DU, another contestant's RU, but both contestants on their application indicate they would like to be paired with this other vendor's equipment for mobility testing. So type A and type B are only for mobility testing. They do not qualify for the best multi-vendor integration prizes. The third option, option type C, is a cold pairing of one contestant's RU and another contestant's CU and DU that is selected by the 5G Challenge organizers. Type C can be involved in mobility testing, or they can be in that second track, the track that only does the multi-vendor integration testing and stops there. The stage 3 end-to-end integration testing, again, we're testing an end-to-end data session with the CU, DU, and RU, and all contestants must participate in both stage 2, the wraparound emulation, and stage 3 end-to-end integration testing before proceeding to mobility testing. The test will include both mandatory and optional elements, and again, only type C qualifies for this prizes, the best multi-vendor integration prizes. This lab testing we're expecting to take 3, 4, or 6 weeks depending on what type of integration. So if it's type A, a single vendor, we're expecting this to take roughly 3 weeks. If it's a designated pairing of contestants who have worked together with each other before, we're expecting the integration to take roughly 4 weeks. And a cold pairing, we're expecting to take roughly 6 weeks. Of all of the type C, that is cold pairings of contestants that undergo end-to-end integration testing, the pairings with the top score and the second highest score will receive group prizes of the best multi-vendor integration prizes. So this is awarded equally to the RU contestant and the combined CU/DU contestant. And the top prize is $750,000 and 3 weeks of lab time with Cable Labs. The second prize winners will receive $250,000. So let's move to stage 4, mobility testing. Mobility testing, this figure shows what we're trying to accomplish. We will take 2 end-to-end data sessions from stage 3 that have already proven they can work, And now they're going to work together through the SA core to communicate first through the NG interface and then through the XN interface. And in this example here, on the left, we have a type A pairing, single vendor, and on the right, we have a cold pairing of two different contestants who had not worked with each other before. And throughout this entire track, if you're on mobility testing, you will be on the same emulated UE and test system, either Keysight or Viavi. And that's going to simplify your flow through this lab testing. The mobility testing, again, we can involve any of these two different pairing types on each side, type A, type B, or type C. We are expecting the mobility testing to take roughly 6 weeks. The mobility testing group that has the highest score will receive a group award prize of $3 million divided among the contestants involved. And because there are these 3 different pairing types, that could be 2 contestants, 3 contestants, or 4 contestants. And so the prize per contestant depends on how many contestants. With 2 prizes, that's a type A pairing versus a type A single vendor pairing, $1.5 million each. If there are 3 contestants, then $1 million each. And if there are 4 contestants, then that would be type B or C, either a designated pairing or a cold pairing on each side, then it's $750,000 per contestant. The contest will end with the closing ceremony, the prize awards, and brief contestant debriefs. Those will be one-on-one conversations between contestants and our team to receive feedback from contestants. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Mark Paletti, the Director of Mobile Networks for Cable Labs. Mark?
Great, thank you, Margaret. Thanks to you, Margaret, and thanks to the NTIA and DoD for the opportunity to be the host lab for this year's challenge. Those of you that aren't familiar, Cable Labs and Curio subsidiary have a long history of interops and plugfests for the cable and wireless ecosystem as an industry neutral host lab. We continually work with the vendor and operator community to develop, test, and certify industry standards and certification. Our history spans continued evolution of DOCSIS, the data over cable specification, now onto DOCSIS 4.0, as well as key wireless technologies and Wi-Fi, CBRS, and Open RAN, where we conduct development and certifications in our CTIA, OnGo Alliance, and OTIC certified labs. Excuse me. We're leveraging this history, industry activity, and technical expertise, as well as being host of last year's 5G Challenge, into hosting this year's 5G Challenge events and activities. So as host lab, our responsibilities will include providing a secure lab environment to all the contestants to conduct their tests, which includes remote secure access to the lab. And we're committed to providing our expert and seasoned technical staff to support all test activities, including operation of Open RAN test equipment, running test cases, troubleshooting, capturing, reviewing data logs, and interpreting test results and specifications, and then just overall coordination of the test schedules, logistics, and other support. So there's 3 ways for a contestant to deliver their subsystem to the host lab. First one is basically bring your own server. So the contestant will ship a pre-installed, tested, operational subsystem to our lab for installation and test. Second is a remote install to our Kubernetes OpenShift CAS cluster, where the contestant will be given remote access to upload their software for installation, integration into the cluster. And thirdly, is to do a remote install to our bare metal servers. Contestant will be given remote access to install their operating system and then install and integrate their software onto the host lab hardware for integration and test. So next, I'll just kind of, as Margaret reviewed in the 4 stages of the challenge in her presentation, I'll provide a little bit more detail detail of these stages from a host lab perspective. So first, there's 2 subsystems for stage 2, as you see here. The RU test will consist of a wraparound tester, which includes a DU emulator and an RF emulator, where the DU emulator will test the front haul, and then the RF emulator has signaling for the IQ channel emulation, and it will be testing both with a Viavi and a Keysight test equipment will be available, and the main things we'll be testing are just integration into the test harness itself, and then conformance tests, M plane, S plane, and CU plane testing. And the next stage 2 DUT is the CU, combined CU and DU. And here we have, again, we'll have Viavi and Keysight test equipment available, the wraparound testers, we call it. And we've got a 5G core emulator and an RU emulator and a CU emulator to test the different interfaces that are shown here, the front haul, NG and XN. Here, the test categories that we'll be conducting include just integration into the test harness itself, and then functionality and some interoperability tests. And the whole idea of the stage 2 tests is to demonstrate conformance to the Open RAN specifications and 3GPP standards, so that when these subsystems get plugged into the stage 3 testing, it'll have a high success rate of plugging in and conducting an end-to-end test. So, and then here we go to the stage 3 testing. Again, the actual components, the test equipment will consist of a UE emulator and a real 5G core. And the tests will include integration, functional, and performance, stress, reliability, and stability. So the idea here is to integrate it into the test harness, and then get functional, interface and capability, and then do performance tests where you have with a single UE and emulation, and perform different types of traffic profiles, and a lightly loaded network, and then the next step would be to go into more complex stress and reliability and stability tests. And then for stage 4 is the mobility test that Margaret reviewed. And basically the best way to explain this is we'll be looking at 2 different testing combinations, the type A, B, or C, and they'll be plugged into our 5G core, and there'll be a UE emulator, and we'll be testing for NG and XN handover. So that's all I have. Thank you for your time and attention, and I'll hand this back to Julie.
Hello again. There we go. So this slide shows the price structure for stages 2, 3, and 4 that were just explained. Stage 3 also includes 3 weeks of lab time for the winner for the best RU and the best CU/DU. There will also be prizes for the 2 best SBOMs and the best collaborator, plus 2 weeks of security lab test time. This slide shows the time estimates to complete the different tracks. This is just estimates based on our best guess at this point. The actual lab time will vary based on the market maturity and whether type A, B, or C are part of the contest. For example, A will take less time because it's a complete CUDU-RU, whereas type C will have the cold integration where the RU and CUDU have not integrated with before, and we anticipate that will take longer. So this slide shows the information about our publication policy. I'm not going to go through all details in the slide, but the basic information is that we are going to publish winners, lessons learned, summaries, and we're going to have a closing ceremony video that we're going to put on our website after the closing ceremony. And we're not going to publish, just rest assured, we're not going to publish your SBOM and VEX. That would be a security issue. And we're also not going to publish who was not selected, who failed, who withdrew, that type of thing. This is going to be just publishing the winners and the successes and the lessons learned and that type of thing. This slide shows some important dates that you should be aware of. One of the most important dates to take note of is March 1st. That's when you need to submit your application, your white paper, by 7 p.m. Eastern time. So make sure to check that date and time and get your application in by the due date. After that due date, we will not be accepting any applications. And there's information on our website about how to do that application. On March 6th, an initial set of contestants will be announced and others will be put on our wait list, and we'll be notifying folks later if we accept folks off of our wait list. The SBOM and the VEX must be provided 2 weeks after you're accepted. And on March 20th, testing will begin. And at that point, we will be giving folks the detailed test plans. Right now, you can look on our website and you can see test plan overview with ORAN Alliance specifications and 3GPP standards to see what types of tests we will be doing for each of the different stages. But then on March 20th, you will receive more detailed test plans and you will know exactly what's going to be tested for each of the stages. We will have a September 21st closing ceremony at Cable Labs in Boulder, Colorado. We anticipate this to be an in-person event. It could change depending on, health protocols and whatnot, but we plan on it being an in-person event and probably a full-day event, but more details will come on that as we get closer. Also, as we did last year in our 2022 challenge, this year as well, we will do one-on-one contestant debriefs after the contest, and then whoever wins different lab time for both the in-kind lab time and security lab time, there will be a window where you can schedule that lab time with the host lab. I'm going to go quickly through the next couple slides because all of these slides and the recording of the webinar and the FAQs will be available on our website after this presentation. So you can refer to this later. So I'm going to go quickly to get on to the questions and answers. So there's a few links here on SBOM and VEX, and also in our rules, you can get this information as well as our 5G Challenge website is there. I also posted to one of the questions. I provided the link as well there, and you can see our challenge showcase from last year. So we will move on now to the questions, and I will introduce Jeremy, our Deputy 5G Challenge Program Leader, to host and MC our questions.
Thank you, Julie. And yes, just as a quick reminder for everyone, if you've not submitted your questions yet, please do so. Go ahead and type them into the Q&A pan, the panel in the tray, and the control panel at the bottom of your screen, not the chat box. If there are existing questions that you would like to see answered, go ahead and emphasize them with a thumbs up gesture. We will continue collecting all those questions and we'll look to address them now as best as possible during the time allowed. If we are not able to get to your questions today, we will follow up and post answers on the 5G Challenge website in our FAQ documents by the end of the week. And again, our website was just shown on the slides at 5gchallenge.nta.gov. Okay, so during our Q&A, I have Julie. I will be answering some questions. Julie can answer questions. On the Cable Lab side, Mark is available to answer some questions. So I'll go ahead and start by pulling up the questions that we received from the registrants. So again, thank you very much for the interest and for all the questions that we've received so far. I do want to acknowledge I've been tracking the Q&A box. There's a lot of really good questions, and apologies, we might be limited on time, but we will follow up either directly or in the FAQ for all the questions that we get today. So thank you again. Okay, so first, I'm going to return back to the eligibility topic. We received a few questions on that topic. So first is, can service providers team up with vendors, and can academia team up with industry? So basically, you know, is teaming allowed, and is that possible? And the answer is yes. Multiple organizations or multiple individuals can work together and submit a single application. You will need to choose a single point of contact. Whether you're an individual, it'll be a team leader, or an organization, it'll be a lead organization that'll be on the white paper, and they'll serve as our point of contact. This is important because once we get to the end, and if there's any prize money awarded to that submission, it will be awarded to that lead organization or that lead individual. NTIA, ITS will not be involved in distributing funding or any disputes in terms of that partnership. There's a single point of contact and a single organization that we will be awarding prizes to. All right, second, can a qualified principal investigator represent a technology through a startup with limited or no corporate qualifications? And yes, they can. The corporate qualifications are not part of eligibility. We reviewed that, and actually I'll follow up on that. I got a couple of questions on eligibility that I'll put in here. But just note that eligibility, that corporate qualification and eligibility, there are elements of that in the white paper. So just be sure to follow the template, look at the example white paper, and follow and provide all the information I've requested. A third question on eligibility: I work for a company that is doing contracted work for the US government. Are we permitted to participate? Government contractors, as I mentioned before, are not barred exclusively from the 5G challenge. However, it cannot be within the scope of your employment or your contract with the government. So essentially, if you are a contractor, as long as you are not participating under the scope of your existing contract and billing to that contract for your work on the 5G challenge, you're fine. But any employees that are working on the 5G challenge cannot bill their time to a US government contract. So essentially, you cannot be paid by the government to participate in our challenge. If you have more specific questions, and we have received some very specific questions, you can contact us directly. That's the best way. We can reply via email. Our email again is 5gchallenge@nta.gov. And I just will put in one more note here on entities. I did receive a question or two on multiple organizations and referring to the eligibility criteria. So if you are an entity that is incorporated in the United States and you have a US address, i.e. principal place of business, that's what principal place of business means, is you're incorporated in the United States, you're eligible. If you are multiple organizations, and some are not, but some are, then the lead organization that submits the white paper must be an incorporated US business. It's up to you to partner, and again, with prize money and any other decisions that are made outside of that single point of contact or on the partnership and on the organizations, but the single point of contact must be registered and incorporated in the United States to be eligible. Okay, and we will come back to some specific questions on that topic as we have time, but I want to go through the pre-registered questions. And the next one is on challenge structure. Will the RIC be involved in any testing for the challenge? And I want to throw this one over to Julie.
Yes, thank you, Jeremy. No, we are not having RIC for this particular challenge. It's just CU, DU, and RU. However, I am happy to announce that NTIA and DoD intend to host a RIC XApp forum for 2024 to showcase live XApp demonstrations. There will be more information coming, hopefully early this summer, and we do welcome folks to come and demonstrate a working XApp in RIC.
Thank you, Julie. And I've got a couple more for you for the structure. This next question is, what's next for the winners of the 5G challenge after they finish their competing and participating this year?
Well, this is our second year of a challenge. We do not anticipate at this point a follow-on year. However, we don't know. Some things could change going forward into the future. We are not specifically planning on any additional events after the closing ceremony, except for that one-on-one conversation that we do have with the winners to gain information and help facilitate ORAN in the community. DoD also is, they're funding this effort for us, and they will use the 5G challenge results to help validate Open RAN as an architecture of the future, and also establish the deployment readiness of Open RAN systems, and share our results and our testing and our automation with the community to really springboard ORAN.
All right, last one to you for now, Julie. Will the 2023 5G challenge include security testing?
The security testing for the 2023 challenge are really the SBOM and the VEX that is submitted 2 weeks after acceptance. And then also for some winners, we're going to have some weeks of security testing as in-kind prize to really go through and be able to have additional testing and verification of the interfaces.
Okay, great. Let's turn to some questions on the technical specifications of the challenge, and this will go to Mark. Are there any limitations or requirements on the output power?
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. The limitation that we have on output power is max radiated power is limited to 10 watts. We'll be in a cabled environment, so just FYI on that, but 10 watts is the limit.
Okay, next we have a common question. We have a question about C-band and millimeter wave beamforming antenna. Can you address that, Mark?
Yeah, so the way we've are looking at hosting the challenge is to limit the frequency band to FR1 and then up to 4x4 MIMO. So no millimeter wave and limited MIMO for this this year's event.
All right, next question. Can we submit use-modified COTS-based MANET radios? And I'll let you describe that a little bit more. We have persistent systems, Silvus, Trellisware, et cetera. Mark?
Yeah, so our perspective is that as long as the radios are compliant to 3GPP standards and the ORAN Alliance specifications, then that will be looked at and is okay to submit.
Okay, is a specification available for the 5G standalone core that contestants will use? In the past with the cores, the questioner asked, the core vendor adheres to the 3GPP specs for the most part, but with some small gaps.
Yeah, I completely understand that perspective. And the details on the host lab 5G SA core will be included in the host lab configuration for more details on that.
Yeah,
okay,
I just want to point out that is on our website, so people can see that host lab configuration right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5gchallenge.ntia.gov/resources. Okay, next question states, we have primarily focused on supporting split 0 and split 6, as that is what the services require. Is there any testing for split 0 and split 6?
Yeah, I mean, so for this challenge in this event, the focus is going to be on the interfaces that were specified in the presentation, and NG, open front haul, and XN. So this is identified in the rules document, and that's where you can find more details on the interfaces that we're going to be testing.
And
yeah, and it's 7-2X split only. Sorry.
Open
yeah, and if after reading our rules and OSI config, you have follow-up questions, please feel free to send those to us, 5gchallenge@nta.gov. All right, next, can the CUDU be run as bare metal, or does it need to run on a CAAS?
So those are two of the three choices for subsystem delivery. One is on bare metal and one is on OpenShift. So a CUDU can run an either or, and those are choices that are available by the host lab to support. So bare metal, we ask the contestant will be asked to be given access to remote access to our lab to install our operating system, and then to upgrade or update and upload their software and integrate their software onto the bare metal servers. And then the other option for them is to install on our OpenShift Kubernetes 4.8 virtualized cluster.
Okay, thanks, Mark. A couple more to you. Well, one more to you for now, actually. We got a question from a participant. Could you provide details of servers, NIC cards, and FPGA cards that will be provided by Cable Labs?
Yeah, so for the bare metal server or bare metal option and the Kubernetes options, we have Intel. We have both Intel and AMD based servers that are available for the contestants to install and deploy their systems. The Dell servers have Intel CPU cores. There's 24 of them. There's 512 gigabytes of memory and 2 terabytes of SSDs. And as we mentioned before, there is going to be available remote access via a VPN to remotely do the install. And the NICs are, we have Intel i350s and Mellanox MT 27700s. So we can provide more detail. Typically what we do is when we get into that level of detail, when the contestant is starting out and we have a kickoff meeting with the contestants, we'll go into those details as what is available and what's needed by the contestant and what's needed by the host lab. So we can follow up on that at that time.
Okay, thank you. And that, I think, is the list of questions that we got. We combined a few questions. If your question was not specifically answered and you would like additional information, again, please email us and we will respond. But now I want to go and transition to some of the questions that we've received. We've gotten a lot of questions so far today. Thank you again, and please keep them coming if something new comes up or your question is not answered. And we'll try to get to them now. And again, follow up via email and our new updated FAQ document. So we have gotten additional questions on eligibility, and I'll revisit the topic of let's see, does this, okay, so if you have current active government contract with the DoD, can you not participate in the challenge? I did specify that you just cannot be paid by the government to participate in our 5G challenge. So you need to be off of the contract and not within the scope of an existing contract that you're working on for the US government. I did cover other members of a team or entity group that is not that are not eligible. Can non-eligible organizations join an eligible organization to submit? The answer is yes. You can have international teams of organizations. You can have an international team of individuals. But in the case of individuals, the individual who is the team lead and submitting to us must be a U.S. citizen over 18 years of age. The organization that submits to us must be a U.S. based, incorporated in the United States with a U.S. Primary place of business. So again, just to clarify, you can join a team with a qualified team lead. And I did get an interesting question. So we did specify that companies barred from U.S. contracting are ineligible, and that does include teams. If you're on a team, you cannot be barred. Nobody who submits or participates in the 5G challenge can be barred, and that includes Treasury and BIS and other lists. So if you have questions specifically about that, please email us. Okay, I'm going to read these because I haven't had time to vet them, and if I've covered them already, apologies. Can a company be part of multiple affiliate teams with each team submitting an application for the challenge? Yes, as long as all the applications clearly identify the company's involvement with these different teams. And we do have partner CUDOs. Sometimes, if you have an RU and there's multiple organizations, just be very clear on the white paper and clearly identify your involvement with the different teams. If you have a specific question, please go ahead and email us. All right, if multiple organizations apply together, do all of them need to have a primary place of business in the US? Okay, so I just commented on that one. Just the leading agency, the entity that submits the white paper as our primary point of contact must be eligible. Okay, this one is for myself or Julie. We have a CU plus DU plus RU. Do we submit all in one white paper? Julie, do you want to go ahead? You want to go ahead and take that one?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So yes, you would put them all in one white paper, and you just have to describe your RU, CU, DU with the page limitations for that application.
All right, thank you. Next question regarding the equipment. Are both released commercial products and reference design prototypes accepted? Julie, do you want to answer that one?
Sure, I would be happy to. I'm sorry, I lost. Oh, yes. They can, yes. They must meet the applicable reference 3GPP standards and ORAN Alliance specifications in the rules. But the amount of commercialization, we're not looking for that in particular, just that they are compliant with standards and specs.
Okay, thank you. Next question, can CU plus DU be multi-vendor? In other words, a CU from vendor A and a DU from vendor B. And I'll just cover this because Margaret covered it in one of the slides. The answer is yes, multiple organizations or multiple individuals can work together to submit a single application. You will need to choose a single point of contact, be it the individual or the organization that will serve as the lead organization who submits the white paper. And again, any prize money will be awarded to that point of contact, and NTIA ITS will not be involved in further distribution of those prize funds. And I should note as well, in regard to the in-kind prizes, we'll be coordinating, with Cable Labs for the lab testing and the security testing. So all of the prizes will be awarded to that single point of contact. So what I just said covers in-kind prizes as well. All right, is there a plan or intention to invite the final winner to attend a DoD or some other government bid, industry day, et cetera? And we just want to clarify, no, that is not a part of this challenge. In general, this challenge structure, a price challenge structure, operates differently than a grant or some other agreement with the government. We are awarding prizes for the top performing solutions, and it is strictly a reward for your participation in the challenge. It is not there are no requirements or statements of work moving forward or any contract strings attached. All right, next we have, can a Fortune 200 company participate? Yes, that would be great. We will not bar anyone from being on the Fortune list, but as long as you adhere to the same eligibility and requirements that are in the rules and that we've explained today, I'm happy to get that question, I think. Okay, we are a wholly owned US-based subsidiary company, but our parent company is European. Are we allowed to participate? And the answer is yes. When we get a white paper submission from a contestant, in order to verify eligibility, we will be looking at the corporation itself and the address that's stated on the white paper, and we will be going by that. Just note, if there's any false information, it'll come to light. So just please put your US-based address, be very clear on what company is submitting, who's the lead organization. When it comes time to award prizes, there's a government process, and we will be obtaining that information to verify it anyway. So that's where that information goes. So it is very important that if you are a group of organizations or you're a subsidiary to a foreign corporation, be very clear, please, on your white paper. What is the name of your U.S. company, and what is your U.S. address? Okay, next question. Can an organization that does not have an RU/CU/DU collaborate with an organization with an RU/DU/CU in a testing or advisory role? Generally, yes. We have no restrictions on partnerships except for BARD organizations and BARD individuals. But feel free to partner with different organizations to meet the eligibility to meet the criteria in the white paper for an RU or a CU/DU that we can accept. I don't know if Julie or Mark would like to add anything to that about organizations that need to partner to fulfill a requirement for a CU/DU or an RU in order to submit for the challenge.
No, I think you answered it well.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add either.
Okay. All right. So at this point, I'm watching the clock. I don't want to take too much time to go past the hour, but we do have quite a few questions. I think we'll try to get through as many as we can. And again, just aim to cut off at the top of the hour. So let's just keep rolling. We've got some technical questions. So Mark, I'm going to throw the next one over to you. Let's see. Yeah, I'm going to drop down just a little bit. So does the contestant engineer need to be on site all the time for the duration of the challenge?
So we prefer to have on-site presence by the contestants. And at the very least, obviously, we need remote access. Will benefit the contestants and the challenge team to have one person or a team on site to help facilitate and expedite troubleshooting and just supporting the general test activity. So that's my answer.
All right, next one to you, Mark. Which vendor 5G standalone core will be used? I know this is in the rules document for folks. Go ahead.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
Mark,
Yeah, it's going to be Mavenir's 5G SA core and runs on OpenShift 4.8.
Okay, thank you. A couple of questions on structure again. So I'll go back to Julie. Is the SBOM necessary for the RU?
Yes, you need to support an SBOM and a VEX for both the RU and CU/DU.
Okay, one more to Julie. Can you repeat what is type C end-to-end and how it differentiates from type B?
Yes, type C is what we're calling cold integration, where a CU/DU and an RU vendor have never integrated with before. Type B is where you have previously had integration between an RU and a CU/DU before the contest.
Okay, and I know we threw a lot of information on those slides, but that's why we will provide the slides on our website in this recording. And then we are also accepting questions throughout the application period at our email address at 5gchallenge@ntia.gov. Okay, next question for Mark. Are both NG and XN mobility testing mandatory, or would NG mobility suffice?
So stage 4 is an optional stage test, and within that both NG and XN CU handover testing are going to be required to pass stage 4 testing. Hopefully that answers the question.
All right, great. Good, we'll just keep going.
I will add, as I mentioned before, that we are still finalizing the final detailed test plans. So those will be available on March 20th on our website. But right now you can look at the test plan overview to kind of see the general information about testing.
All right, let's keep rolling. Is there an expectation that open front haul subsystem will pass the in-plane test cases in the current release of the open front haul test specifications? Does this include O, A, and M model, flat, and hierarchical? Mark.
Yeah, so two answers to that. One is that it has to demonstrate compliance to the ORAN specifications. And then two, I mean, short answer is yes. It's with hierarchical and hybrid modes will be verified.
Okay, next question, back over to Mark again. Could we bring our own CUDU hardware and they have a specific server identified and radio, or do we have to use Cable Labs as a server?
So this goes back to the three types of delivery of a contestant subsystem. So the contestant can either bring their own hardware that's pre-configured, tested, and operational, and they ship that to the host lab, and then we work with the contestant to integrate it, install and integrate it into our test harness. And then the other option is to do a remote install onto our bare metal servers or to our Kubernetes cluster. So.
Okay, I think we have a time for maybe 2 or 3 more questions. These are quick answers, and then I'm going to hand it back to Julie to close this out. Is there a similar pairing, i.e. type B equals in plane from vendor A with the RU and CUDU from vendor B?
So I'm say it again. Is there mixing interfaces? I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So it might be okay. So is there a similar pairing, i.e. type B equals M plane from vendor A with the RU CUDU from vendor B? So we have a possible answer of that kind of pairing will be possible in stage 3 multi-vendor scenario. This is getting a little into the weeds, but
yeah.
you could have, I think in general, they're asking, can you have an RU from vendor A and a CUDU from vendor B? And that the answer I think is yes, generally.
Yeah, wouldn't that be type C?
Yeah, cold pairing. Okay, let's go. We're getting a little bit into the weeds just because there are a lot of good questions, but let's go with our next one. If we have our own standalone core CUDU plus RU, should we submit? Are we forced to use the Cable Labs' standalone core? So the question is just generally, Mark, can they use their own core?
No, the answer is no. They'll be using the host lab 5G SA core, which is Mavenir's core.
Okay. With that, I'd love to kind of keep going more, but again, these are quite technical questions. So I think just for the general audience, probably be best to go ahead and wrap up now with Julie. And what I'll say again is that we received a ton of really good questions. So we can't thank you enough for attending, for putting your questions out there. We will reply to them. We will update our existing FAQ document that is on our website currently right now with questions and answers from this webinar. And again, if you haven't submitted, you still have time to submit some questions in the Q&A box here. If you come up with a question later, please email it to 5gchallenge@ntia.gov. And with that, thank you very much, Julie and Mark, for answering our questions. And I'll hand it back to Julie for the closing.
Yes, thank you so much, Jeremy. Thank you for leading the Q&A. I want to thank everybody for attending today's seminar. We hope you all found it very informative. We look forward to your applications for this year's challenge. Remember that March 1 due date at 7 p.m. Eastern. Thanks to all the panelists from NTIA and Cable Labs Curio. As Jeremy mentioned, we will address unanswered questions in our FAQs, the PowerPoint presentation, the updated FAQs, the webinar recording. We expect to have it out by the end of next week. And also just look down at the bottom of our webpage and sign up for our distro list. And you will receive email notifications. We hope everybody has a wonderful day. Thanks so much.